The checkered floor stretched out in black and white squares beneath Luca Calabrese, the pattern blurring as rain hammered against the diner windows with the force of 1,000 fists. The neon sign outside flickered pink and blue through the glass, casting his shadow in competing colors across the booth where his daughter Emma lay convulsing, her small body seized by something that had no name and no mercy. Lightning cracked across the summer sky like a whip. 3:22 in the morning. The diner was nearly empty, just 2 waiters frozen against the counter, their aprons stained with grease, their bodies paralyzed by the sight before them. They had worked double shifts. They had handled emergencies. They had never handled this. Luca Calabrese was 6'2", broad-shouldered, with dark hair silvered at the temples and eyes the color of storm clouds. His suit was tailored Italian silk, midnight blue, the kind that cost more than most people earned in a year. A scar ran from the corner of his left eye to his cheekbone, thin and pale, a permanent map of the night his brother betrayed him 15 years ago. His hands that had signed names into death warrants, hands that commanded empires built on fear and loyalty codes written in blood, trembled uselessly at his sides as he knelt beside the booth. Emma was 7 years old. She had his eyes. She had his mother's smile, though that smile had vanished 45 minutes ago when the seizure began at home, sudden and violent, her small body rigid as if electricity ran through her bones. "Daddy, Daddy," she gasped between convulsions, her voice barely audible beneath the roar of the storm outside. Luca had faced rival families. He had stared down federal prosecutors. He had built an empire in Las Vegas from nothing but will and ruthlessness. But this broke him completely. The paramedics were 12 minutes out. The dispatcher had said so 3 minutes ago. Meaning 9 minutes remained. The booth seat beneath Emma was wet with rain that had blown through the open door when Luca carried her inside, screaming her name into the night. His coat, cashmere worth more than a year of modest living, lay discarded on the floor. His white shirt was soaked. His tie hung loose. He was no longer the most feared man in Las Vegas. He was a father who could not save his daughter. Then the door burst open. The woman who stepped inside wore a blue delivery uniform, faded from 100 washes, the collar fraying at the edges. She was 32 years old but looked 45, the way poverty and exhaustion age a person from the inside out. Her hair was dark, pulled back with a rubber band, and her eyes were sharp green, alert, moving fast. She carried a pizza box and had $5 in her pocket, all that remained of her paycheck after she had filled her gas tank so she could work tomorrow's shift at the restaurant where she picked up orders at 3 a.m. and earned tips that never covered the cost of showing up. Her name was Aria Sinclair. She saw the circle of men. She heard the sound, not quite a scream, something worse, something animal and helpless. Without thinking, without asking who these men were or why a child lay convulsing in a booth in an empty diner in the middle of a thunderstorm, Aria dropped the pizza box on the counter and moved. She pushed through the circle with the quiet authority of someone who had spent the last 3 years volunteering at the Harbor Street shelter, tending to children society had forgotten. She had held seizure victims before. She had learned what to do. "Move," she said. Not a request. Luca looked up. For the first time since the seizure began, something that was not panic crossed his face. Something like recognition flickered in his storm-gray eyes, though he could not have known her, could not have understood why she moved with such certainty toward his daughter. Aria dropped to her knees beside the booth. The checkered floor was wet and cold beneath her. She worked with practiced efficiency, no hesitation, no fear. She turned Emma onto her side, supported her head, checked the airway with fingers that had done this 100 times before. "Emma," Aria whispered. "Emma, honey. I am here. You are safe." The child's eyes focused for a moment on Aria's face. Between gasps, between the rhythmic jerking of her small body, Emma's voice emerged like wind through a broken window. "Daddy," Emma breathed. "Luca. Tell him. Tell him Aria is here." The name landed like a gunshot in the silence. Luca's entire body went still. His hands, which had been reaching uselessly toward his daughter, froze. his eyes fixed on the woman kneeling beside Emma, and something cold and dangerous stirred in his chest. She knew Emma. The child knew her by name. But there was no time for questions. Aria's hand was already rolling up her sleeve, revealing the inside of her forearm, pale, marked with a bruise from a previous donation, covered in the small marks of a life lived on the edge. She looked at Luca with absolute clarity. "She needs blood," Aria said. Her voice was steady, like someone stating a simple fact. "I am O negative. Universal donor. Take mine." The paramedics, one of the waiters began, but Aria cut him off with a look that silenced him completely. 12 minutes, Aria said. She did not look away from Luca. "She will be dead in 4. Do you understand? Dead. Not injured. Not scared. Dead." Luca understood. In that moment, on a checkered diner floor while rain hammered the windows and lightning illuminated his daughter's face, Luca Calabrese stared at a woman with grocery-stained hands and $5 in her pocket who was offering what no amount of money could buy, not loyalty, not fear, not the carefully constructed relationships of his empire. This was something rarer. This was her blood. This was her choice to stay when running away would have been easier. Luca moved faster than his men had ever seen him move. He pulled out his phone. 2 words, "Get here." The phone clicked off. From somewhere in the night, from one of the black SUVs parked in the shadows, from the safe houses and the hidden spaces of his operation, men in dark suits began moving toward the diner like ghosts in the rain. Aria was already at the window now, her arm extended, and Luca was stripping off his suit jacket, rolling up his pristine white shirt to match her arm extended to the light. What neither of them understood in that moment was that this single act of desperation, a woman giving her blood to save a stranger's child, would bind them together in ways neither could escape. The most feared man in Las Vegas had just met the one person who might refuse to be afraid of him. And somewhere in the darkness, in the spaces between raindrops and heartbeats, everything was about to change. Before we continue, drop a like if this story hits you. If you have ever known someone who gave everything they had to save someone else, share it with someone you love. Subscribe so you do not miss what is coming next, because what happens after this moment will shock you. We wish you good health and happiness. Now, let us go back to the beginning. 3 weeks earlier. Back to before the storm. Back to where this story truly starts, not with the seizure, not with the diner, but with the sound of a foreclosure notice being slipped under a door at 2 in the morning. Back to Aria Sinclair, alone in her apartment, with $5 in her pocket and no idea that in 15 days her entire life would splinter into before and after. 3 weeks earlier. Back to before the storm. Back to where this story truly begins, not with the seizure, not with the diner, but with the sound of a foreclosure notice being slipped under a door at 2 in the morning. Aria Sinclair sits at her kitchen table under a flickering lamp that hums like a dying animal. The bulb flickers. Flickers again. She does not replace it because a new bulb costs $2.75, and $2.75 matters now. Everything matters now. Crumpled bills lie spread across the scratched laminate in front of her. Ones. A 5. 3 more ones. She counts them again. $78. That is everything. That is all that stands between her family and the street. Next to the money sits an envelope. White. Official. Unopened. She knows what is inside. The bank sent a letter 3 weeks ago that she did read. This one, she cannot bear to open. The foreclosure notice for $22,000 sits sealed in the darkness like a blade waiting to fall. Through the thin apartment wall, she hears her neighbor's television flickering on. Late-night cooking show. The sound of it makes her stomach clench because she has not eaten since yesterday afternoon. A half sandwich from the diner's trash can. Cold. But it kept her moving through the evening shift. In the bedroom next to hers, separated by a door that does not quite close, her children sleep. Michael is 9 years old. Sophie just turned 6. They share a bed because the second bedroom became a storage room 2 years ago when the medical bills started. The bills for Michael's asthma inhaler. The bills for Sophie's ear infection that would not heal. Aria stands. Her knees pop. Everything pops now. Everything aches. 28 years old, but her body feels like something weathered, something left out in the rain too long. She walks to the window. Rain streams down the glass in rivers of black. The July thunderstorm hammers the city. Lightning cracks the sky open. For a moment, everything is white. Her delivery uniform hangs on the chair beside the window. Still damp. She wore it for a 12-hour shift that ended at midnight. Picked up orders at the late-night diner. Drove them across the city in her 2008 Honda with the check engine light that has been glowing orange for 6 months. The light means something is broken. She does not have the money to find out what. Tips today, $4.32. Actual dollars. Not the handful of pennies some customers leave. She will leave for work again in 3 hours. The graveyard shift. 3 to 9 in the morning. She walks for miles because the bus does not run her route after midnight. The walk takes 55 minutes if she moves fast. She can move fast. She has been moving fast for so long that stillness feels dangerous now. The rain pounds harder. Thunder rolls across the city like something alive. Aria thinks about her daughter's shoes. Sophie's first pair. Real shoes that actually fit. She paid $12 for them 6 months ago at a thrift store. Sophie wore them for exactly 2 weeks before her feet grew. The shoes sit in a box in the closet. Aria cannot throw them away. She doesn't know why. They are just shoes. But she kept them. She keeps them the way some mothers keep hospital bracelets or baby blankets. Meanwhile, across the city, rain also hammers against the glass of a penthouse that overlooks the entire Las Vegas Strip. Floor-to-ceiling windows. The kind of view that costs money most people will never see. Luca Calabrese stands at that window. 6'2". Built like a man who expects violence and has prepared for it his entire life. Dark hair swept back from a face carved from stone. A scar runs from the corner of his left eye to his cheekbone like someone once tried to cut the answer to a question right out of his skull. He wears a tailored suit that costs more than everything Aria owns. White shirt unbuttoned at the collar, revealing the hollow space of his throat. A gold watch catches the lightning. Expensive. Devastating in its simplicity. Beside him stands Vinny. In his 50s. Broad-shouldered. Loyal for 17 years. Behind him, Enzo. Younger. Quieter. A scar on his neck like a thin white smile. Luca does not move. He does not acknowledge the storm. His eyes are fixed on something neither Vinny nor Enzo can see. Some thought. Some calculation. Some poison he is turning over in his mind. She is not in the city, Vinny says. His voice is rough like broken gravel. Luca does not respond. We have checked every hospital. Every shelter. Every place she might. I know where we have checked, Vinny. The words fall like stones into still water. Vinny goes silent. Enzo shifts his weight. In 17 years, Vinny has never heard Luca use that tone. Not with him. Luca's voice is usually quiet. Controlled. Like the hum of an engine that could tear apart a city block. This is different. The Blackwell family, Enzo says. It is not a question. Luca turns from the window. His scar catches the light. I want to know every move Evelyn Blackwell has made in the last 72 hours. Every phone call. Every meeting. Every restaurant reservation. Every payment her accounts have made. Evelyn Blackwell is a woman in her early 60s who inherited the Blackwell crime syndicate from her father. She wears diamonds and cruel smiles like matching accessories. She keeps her hands clean and her enemies terrified. She is everything Luca used to respect before respect became a weapon he could no longer afford to hold. 8 years ago, Luca's own brother Marco made a choice. Marco was weak. Or maybe Marco was afraid. Maybe there is no difference. Marco sold family roots to the Blackwell organization. Marco thought he was clever. Thought he was building something new. Thought he could survive the consequences. Luca chose mercy at first. He always does. He chose to offer Marco a way out. A flight. A new identity. A second chance in a place where the Calabrese name meant nothing. Marco refused. So Luca made a different choice. The kind of choice that has no going back. Marco disappeared into the night 8 years ago. Nobody in Las Vegas has seen him since. Since that night, Luca has trusted no one completely. He cannot. Trust is another word for vulnerability, and vulnerability is another word for the blade that will eventually find your throat. But he has one soft spot. One place where the armor cracks. His daughter. Emma. 7 years old. Dark hair like his. Eyes like her mother, who died when Emma was 3 days old. Luca has kept her hidden. Private school with security. A guard who follows her everywhere. A life so protected that sometimes Luca wonders if he is raising a daughter or building a cage. 3 days ago, Emma vanished from school. The guard reported that she was taken. Not by violence. By cunning. By someone who knew the schedule. Who knew the exit. Who knew exactly when the window would be open. Luca has turned the entire city upside down. Every contact. Every resource. Every favor he is owed and every threat he can manufacture. Nothing. So now he stands at a window and wonders if his brother is dead or if his brother is alive and working with Evelyn Blackwell to destroy the only thing Luca has ever loved. 3 blocks from the penthouse, on a street corner where rain collects in puddles like spilled ink, a man watches Aria walk home from the diner. His name is Douglas Hale. He is 54 years old. His face is unremarkable. The kind of face you forget immediately after seeing it. That is intentional. That is useful in his line of work. He watches Aria shuffle down the street, plastic bags cutting into her wrists, her sneakers with holes in the soles letting water seep through. She walks fast. She always walks fast. Eyes down. Never looking around. Never aware. Douglas Hale has been circling her for weeks. Watching. Learning. Understanding the shape of her desperation like a hunter learning the territory of a wounded animal. He has contacts in every escort operation in Nevada. He has clients in Las Vegas, Phoenix, Los Angeles. Wealthy men who want a particular type of girl. Young. Desperate. Unlikely to report anything to the police. Douglas specializes in finding those girls and bringing them into his network. Aria Sinclair is perfect. She has children to support. Medical debt. A foreclosure notice. She is so close to the edge that one small push would send her tumbling over. He takes a note on his phone. Photographs her from across the street. She does not notice. Nobody notices Douglas Hale. He thinks to himself, in another week, when the foreclosure is final, when her children have nowhere to sleep, she will be ready. She will be desperate enough to accept his offer. A job. Easy money. The kind of thing that does not require real work, just a pretty face and a willingness to do what needs to be done. In another week, she will be his. At 3:18 in the morning, the rain reaches its violence. Thunder cracks the sky like a fist punching through glass. Aria stands in the late-night diner where she picks up food orders to deliver across the city. The diner is called Lucky's Grill. The sign outside flickers. The neon catches the rain and throws it back at the sky like the earth is trying to fight the storm. Inside, the black and white checkered floor is wet from the door opening and closing. The air smells like burnt coffee and grease and the particular staleness of a place that has been open for 43 years straight. Every surface has been touched by a million hands. Aria stands at the pickup counter in her damp uniform. Her manager, a woman named Rosa who has worked this diner for 21 years, slides 3 hot containers across the counter. Order for Richardson. Order for Martinez. And a soup and salad combo for the Rosewood Hotel, Rosa says. Her voice is tired like she has used up her words for the day. Aria nods. She does not speak. She stopped wasting words a long time ago. Rosa looks at her. Really looks at her. And Rosa has seen enough hard lives to recognize one when it is standing in front of her. You eaten today? I'm fine, Aria says. It is a lie. It is automatic. Rosa hears the lie and says nothing. She reaches into the kitchen and pulls out a sandwich wrapped in plastic. Pastrami. Left over from lunch service. She sets it beside the hot containers. For the road, Rosa says. Aria's eyes burn. She does not cry. Her tears dried up somewhere on a Greyhound bus 3 years ago when she realized her mother was not going to take her children in, that she was alone, that the responsibility of keeping 2 small humans alive rested entirely on her shoulders. After that realization, crying seemed like a luxury she could not afford. Thank you, she says. She gathers the containers and runs for her car. Outside, the rain tears at her like something alive. Lightning splits the sky again. For a moment, the whole world is visible at once. The abandoned buildings. The homeless encampments. The city in all its suffering. Then darkness rushes back. Aria drives. The windshield wipers cannot keep up with the rain. Every delivery takes longer in storms. Tips get smaller. People apologize for not having cash. She nods at their apologies and takes whatever they have. $1. 75 cents. Sometimes nothing. At 3:22 in the morning, a call comes through her delivery phone. A woman's voice. Panicked. Barely controlled. Are you delivering? Do you deliver to the Lucky's Diner? Yes, Aria says. I need food. Fast. My daughter is, the voice breaks. She is sick. She is very sick. Can you bring something? Anything? Soup. Tea. We are at the Lucky's Diner address on file. Please hurry. The line goes dead. Aria knows that voice. She has heard it before. Not in person. But she knows it. It is the voice of a mother who has run out of options. The voice of someone about to lose everything. She turns the car around. The rain hammers the windshield. And somewhere in the darkness, the moment is arriving that will split her life into before and after. The storm is accelerating. The wind is rising. And neither Aria nor Luca knows that in the next 4 minutes, at that diner, everything they have built in separate worlds will collide like lightning hitting the ground. Family is not always bound by blood but by those who choose to stay when the storm arrives. The paramedic's voice cuts through the diner like a blade. O negative. We need O negative right now. The hospital is 11 minutes away. She does not have 11 minutes. Aria does not hesitate. She rolls up her sleeve. I am O negative. Take mine. The diner freezes. Betty's hand trembles over the phone. Frank steps backward into the shadows near the kitchen. The night cook stops moving. In that moment, everyone in the Lucky's Diner witnesses something they will never forget, a woman in a stained delivery uniform, soaking wet, offering her blood to a stranger's child without knowing anything except that the child is suffering. The paramedic works quickly, inserting the needle, drawing the red line into the plastic bag. Aria's arm grows cold. Her head spins slightly. She does not look away from Emma's face. The small girl's breathing steadies. The blue at her lips begins to fade toward pink. Stay with us, sweetheart, Aria whispers. Stay with us. The sirens wail into the night. The ambulance doors close. And then silence crashes back into the diner like a wave. 3 blocks away, Luca Calabrese stands in his penthouse office, the city spread below him like a kingdom of light and shadow. His phone rings at 3:37 in the morning. Vinny's voice, steady but tight with urgency. Boss. Emma. They found her. She is alive. Late night diner. Corner of Fremont and 5th. But she is critical. Bleeding internally. The paramedics are taking her to St. Mary's now. Luca does not respond. He simply hangs up and walks toward the elevator. Vinny and Enzo are already waiting in the garage, engines running, doors open. The black SUVs move through the wet streets like predators. Rain hammers the windows. At 3:39, they arrive at St. Mary's Hospital. Luca does not wait for anyone to open the door. He strides through the emergency entrance, his suit still damp, his dark eyes burning like something about to combust. A nurse points toward surgery. He goes. Outside the surgical suite, at 3:52 in the morning, Aria sits in a plastic chair that smells like disinfectant and thyme. A small bandage covers the inside of her elbow where they drew her blood. She is trembling, but not from blood loss. She is trembling because she knows who Emma belongs to. Footsteps approach. Measured. Unhurried. Luca Calabrese stops 5 feet away from her. He is 6'2", his shoulders broad enough to block the hallway light, his dark hair still wet from rain. A silver scar runs from his left temple to his cheekbone like a permanent reminder of something he survived. His eyes are storm gray. His suit, even damp, costs more than everything Aria owns. He wears a gold watch that probably weighs as much as her car payment. He sits beside her without asking permission. Why did you do that? His voice is deep, solid like an oath. Aria does not look at him. She needed blood. I have blood. You do not know her. You do not know me. You do not know what kind of man I am. He pauses. Why would you do that? Aria finally turns to face him. I know Emma. I have known her for 3 months. She comes to the shelter on Thursdays. Sometimes Saturdays. Always alone. Always scared. Always wearing the same blue jacket even though it stopped fitting her 6 weeks ago. Aria's voice trembles like a candle in the wind. I gave her food from the kitchen. Sandwiches. Soup. I kept her safe in the reading corner. I taught her how to tie her shoes because she did not know how. I did not know she was yours. I did not know she belonged to anyone. Luca's jaw tightens. The muscle in his cheekbone pulses beneath the scar. Your name? Aria Sinclair. Your job? Delivery driver. Night shift. I do 8 to 10 deliveries per night, mostly between midnight and 6 in the morning. Your situation? Aria laughs, bitter and sharp like broken glass. My situation? I have $5 in my wallet. 5. My landlord is evicting my 2 children and me in 7 days because I owe $22,000. I have not eaten in 18 hours because I needed that money for their school shoes. I work 16-hour days and I still cannot keep my head above water. That is my situation. The silence that follows is so complete you can hear the fluorescent lights humming overhead. The surgery will take another 40 minutes, Luca says finally. I am going to tell you something. When Emma was born, I made a decision. I decided that I would never be vulnerable. Never. That vulnerability is a disease that spreads and destroys everything it touches. I decided that the only thing that matters is power. And I have kept that decision for 12 years, since the day my brother betrayed me, since the day I realized that trust is a weapon that people use to cut you open. He turns to face her fully. Then tonight, you saved my daughter's life. You, a woman I have never met, offered your blood to a stranger's child. And in doing that, you proved something I thought was extinct. You proved that people can still choose to act when no one is watching. You proved that kindness is not weakness. It is the only real power that exists. Aria's eyes fill with tears. I do not want to be part of your world, Mr. Calabrese. I have heard the stories. I know what your name means in this city. I know, he says. But you already are part of my world. You have been protecting her for months. You have been keeping her safe when I could not. When no one else would. That puts you in my world whether you choose it or not. 2 hours later, Emma is out of surgery. The doctor reports the transfusion worked. The bleeding has stopped. She will make a full recovery. Luca sits beside her bed and watches his daughter sleep. For the first time in 12 years, tears move down his face. Vinny, standing in the doorway, exchanges a look with Enzo that neither of them has seen in 15 years. Their boss is human after all. The next evening, Aria returns home. She climbs the stairs to her apartment on the 3rd floor, carrying 2 bags of groceries that cost her the last of her delivery tips. She is thinking about the sandwich she will make for Michael and Sophie, about the homework that needs supervising, about tomorrow's shift at 5 in the morning. She stops at her door. Luca Calabrese stands there. Not inside her apartment. Not threatening. Just standing, his hands in his pockets, looking at her with an expression like patience. How did you? Aria begins. I need to talk to you about something, he interrupts. His voice is calm. Not as the man you are afraid of. As a father who owes you a debt he can never repay. Come with me. I have someone watching your children. We will be gone for 1 hour. Against every instinct screaming danger, Aria nods. They drive to his casino in one of the black SUVs. The interior smells like leather and expensive cologne. Rain continues outside, steady now, the storm settling into the city like it plans to stay. In his private office on the 40th floor, overlooking Las Vegas like a kingdom of neon and darkness, Luca shows her the paperwork. The foreclosure notice is stamped paid in full. The $22,000 is gone. Resolved. Transferred. Your debt is finished, he says. Your children stay in their home. Your future is secure. This is what I do for people who save what matters to me. Aria stares at the documents. The numbers feel unreal. $22,000. Her voice is barely a whisper. And more, Luca continues. I have opened an account in your name. $125,000. It is for your children's education. For your future. For the woman who saved my daughter when she was dying and everyone else stood frozen. Aria cannot speak. Cannot breathe. She thinks of the $5 in her wallet. She thinks of the 17 days she stretched $14 to feed 3 people. She thinks of the lamplight over the notebook where she counted and recounted the same numbers hoping they would somehow become larger. I cannot accept this, she says. You already have, Luca replies. This is the beginning of what I owe you. He steps closer. I have a proposition. Emma needs someone. She needs someone who has already proven they will stay. Someone who does not work for me, who cannot be intimidated by my name or my power, who cares about her as a person and not as the daughter of Luca Calabrese. I am asking you to be that person. To come to my home 3 times a week. To spend time with her. To be part of her world. Aria looks at his face. At the scar cutting through his cheekbone. At the storm-grey eyes that have seen violence and power and the dark underside of human nature. She thinks of Emma's small hand in hers at the shelter. She thinks of the Tuesday afternoon when Emma asked if Aria would be her friend forever. Okay, Aria says. But this does not mean I am part of anything else. I am just helping Emma. Luca nods. But something in his expression shifts. Something cold and dangerous stirs in his chest. Because 3 blocks away, Douglas Hale is preparing his next move. And Evelyn Blackwell is attending her charity gala, already planning how to use Aria Sinclair as leverage against the man who has rejected her advances for 7 years. The clock reads 5:15 in the evening. Rain pounds the windows. And neither Aria nor Luca knows that in the next 72 hours, everything will accelerate toward a collision neither could have prevented. The rain hammered against the warehouse windows like bullets fired from heaven, each drop leaving streaks of silver against the industrial glass. The clock on the wall read 2:47 in the morning. The silence inside was the kind that preceded violence, the kind that made men's hearts beat faster than their bodies wanted to allow. 12 figures moved through the darkness like ghosts who had learned to walk on earth again. Black tactical gear. No insignia. No identifying marks. Just men who understood that some orders required no words and some debts required payment in currency that could not be counted in dollars or cents. Vinny led the entry through the eastern loading dock, his footsteps deliberate and unhurried. Enzo covered the back exit with 4 men positioned at angles that left nothing to chance. The warehouse sprawled across 15,000 square feet of concrete and shadow, the kind of place where broken things were stored and forgotten, where the light of day never seemed to reach, where Douglas Hale had been planning his next acquisition. That acquisition was Aria Sinclair. But Douglas Hale did not yet know that his clock had stopped running. The office was on the 2nd level, accessible by a metal staircase that groaned under weight. No alarms. No guards. No real security because Douglas believed himself untouchable, connected, safe within the network of trafficking and exploitation that had become his entire existence. He was sitting at his desk when Vinny opened the door, a cigarette dangling from his lip, a glass of whiskey in his hand, a ledger open in front of him filled with names and numbers and the careful accounting of human suffering. Douglas looked up. His face went white. Not because he recognized these men immediately, but because something in their eyes told him that recognition would not matter. That his connections would not save him. That whatever had brought him to this moment was heavier than money and more absolute than protection. "Where is Luca Calabrese?" Douglas asked, and his voice was already shaking like a wounded animal trying to run on a broken leg. Vinny did not answer. He simply nodded to Enzo, who stepped forward and wrapped Douglas's wrists in plastic restraints with the same efficiency a chef might use to prepare ingredients for dinner. No violence. No shouting. Just the clean execution of a task that had been planned to the smallest detail. Douglas began to scream. His chair toppled backward. His mouth opened and released sounds that were barely human, sounds that spoke of a man who understood, with absolute clarity, that his life as he had known it had ended. He offered money. Millions of dollars transferred anywhere they wanted. He offered information. Names of other traffickers, locations, methods, connections that reached into government and law enforcement. He offered anything, everything, the entire accumulation of 15 years of criminal enterprise, all of it spilling from his mouth like blood from a wound that could not be stopped. None of it mattered. Vinny and Enzo lifted him by his arms, and his feet barely touched the ground as they moved him toward the stairs. The restraints bit into his wrists. The darkness seemed to grow deeper with each step downward. By the time they reached the ground floor, Douglas had stopped screaming. He had moved past the stage of bargaining and entered the silent stage of resignation, the moment when a man understands that he has reached the end of his story. The black van waited outside with its engine running, a mechanical heartbeat in the dead hours before dawn. Douglas was loaded inside like cargo, like the shipments he had spent so many years moving through the network. The doors closed with a sound like a coffin being sealed. The van pulled away from the warehouse and dissolved into the empty Las Vegas streets. Vinny stood in the warehouse doorway and made a single phone call. The conversation lasted 8 seconds. He said 4 words, "It is done, sir." 3 blocks away, in a luxury penthouse that occupied the entire top floor of a building he did not own but controlled through a network of shell companies and silent partners, Luca Calabrese stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking apart like institutions surrendering to the inevitable. He was not looking at the city lights. He was looking at his phone, at the text message that had come through 6 minutes earlier from Aria. "I need help." 2 words. No explanation. No context. Just a declaration of need that cut through every other concern, every other priority, every other obligation that governed his world. He had responded immediately. I am already coming. And he was. He had been dressed and moving toward the door before he finished typing. But there was a complication named Evelyn Blackwell, and complications that wore silk dresses and attended charity galas required a different kind of response. Luca had spent 6 hours the previous evening on the phone with contacts in the Federal Bureau of Investigation, people who owed him favors that stretched back 15 years, people who understood that sometimes the most dangerous criminals wore evening gowns and attended fundraisers. He had provided them with documentation. 8 years of it. Financial records that showed embezzlement from her own charity foundation. Money laundering through art purchases and international wire transfers. Connections to the trafficking network through Douglas Hale, documented through intercepted communications and witness testimony that Luca had carefully cultivated. The raid had been scheduled for dawn. At 5:53 in the morning, as the sky was just beginning to shift from black to deep purple, 40 federal agents arrived at Evelyn Blackwell's estate. They came in 3 black SUVs and a helicopter that landed on the front lawn, the rotors sending the manicured hedges and rose gardens into a frenzy of destruction. News vans were already positioned outside the gates, reporters looking freshly awakened and hungry for the story that was about to unfold. Evelyn was arrested on her front lawn in her silk robe and slippers, her hair uncombed, her face twisted with the shock of a woman who believed herself untouchable. The cameras flashed. The reporters shouted questions. She was read her rights by an agent with a face like stone, and she was led to a waiting SUV with her hands cuffed behind her back. Federal racketeering. Conspiracy. Wire fraud. Conspiracy to commit human trafficking. The charges accumulated like snow during a winter storm, each one adding weight and depth to the catastrophe that was unfolding in real time. The Blackwell family empire crumbled in a single morning. Assets were frozen. Accounts were seized. The foundation that Evelyn had used as a cover for her crimes was shuttered by court order. By noon, she had been transported to a federal holding facility pending trial. By evening, her family's name had become synonymous with corruption and exploitation. Luca watched the evening news footage from a leather chair in his study, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his expression calm and unreadable. Vinny stood near the window, occasionally glancing at his boss with the careful observation of a man who had learned long ago that the most dangerous moments in Luca's presence were the quiet ones. "She is finished," Vinny said finally, stating it as fact rather than opinion. "She was finished the moment she threatened Aria," Luca replied, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "I simply allowed her to understand the timing." Vinny nodded. He had worked for Luca for 12 years, and in those 12 years he had learned that mercy and cruelty were not opposites in Luca's world. They were tools, each one deployed with precision and purpose, each one calibrated to achieve a specific outcome. What had happened to Douglas Hale and Evelyn Blackwell was not cruelty for its own sake. It was justice executed without passion, without anger, without the complications that came when emotion clouded the work. But what Vinny did not yet know was that something had changed in his boss. Something fundamental. Something that suggested that Luca Calabrese, who had built an empire on the foundation of not caring, on the deliberate severing of connections that might be exploited, had allowed one person to slip past his defenses. One woman with $5 in her pocket and a willingness to give her own blood for a stranger. Luca's phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Marco, his head of security. "She is safe. We have stationed men outside the building. The eviction notice has been voided. The transaction has been verified. Safe." The word hung in the air like smoke from a cigarette that had been burning too long. Luca finished his whiskey and set the glass on the table beside him. Outside, Las Vegas stretched beneath him, millions of lights in the darkness, millions of people in the darkness, each one carrying their own storms, their own secrets, their own reasons for surviving another day. By morning, Aria Sinclair would know that Douglas Hale had vanished. She would read the news about Evelyn Blackwell's arrest and understand, with the clarity of someone who had lived long enough to recognize consequences, that something had fundamentally shifted in the balance of her world. What she did not yet know was that the storm was passing. The morning sun broke through the apartment windows like a blade cutting through darkness, illuminating Aria's face as she stood perfectly still in the center of the room. Around her, the walls seemed to close in, suffocating her with their sudden silence. The apartment was no longer hers. Every corner had been transformed overnight, the worn furniture removed, the peeling paint refreshed, the kitchen stocked with food she had never allowed herself to buy. On the kitchen table sat a single envelope, thick and official, bearing the seal of a law firm whose name she did not recognize. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The document read like a sentence. A deed. A trust fund established for her children's education. The eviction notice, voided. The mortgage, paid in full. Everything she had fought for, everything she had sacrificed for, handed to her like a gift she had never earned and could never repay. $230,000 erased from her life in a single transaction. Aria sank into the nearest chair, her legs no longer capable of holding her weight. The shoes. Emma's first pair of shoes, the ones Aria had kept from the shelter all those months ago, sat on the shelf above her head, small and worn and impossibly precious. She reached up and pulled them down, holding them against her chest like they might explain what was happening, like they might anchor her to something real. The phone rang at exactly 8:37 in the morning. The number was blocked. Aria answered anyway. Come to the address Marco sends you. Luca's voice filled the silence, deep and solid like an oath carved in stone. Do not bring anything. Just yourself. The line went dead. The address led her to a penthouse overlooking the entire city, 42 floors above the ground where people like her actually lived. The elevator climbed in absolute silence, each floor a step away from the world she knew. When the doors opened, Luca stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, his silhouette framed against the Vegas skyline, a man carved from shadow and expensive fabric, his charcoal suit tailored to perfection, his white shirt open at the collar revealing the edge of a scar that ran from his collarbone upward. He did not turn when she entered. You are angry, he said. I cannot accept this. Her voice cracked like dry wood breaking under pressure. Whatever this is, I cannot accept it. Luca turned then, and for the first time, Aria saw something in his face that terrified her more than anger ever could. Vulnerability. A wound so deep it had calcified into something that looked like ice but moved like pain. You gave your blood to keep my daughter alive, he said slowly, each word measured and deliberate. You protected her for months when I could not find her. You asked for nothing. Nothing. Do you understand what that means in my world? In a world where everyone wants something, where loyalty is purchased and trust is a transaction, you gave everything you had for a child who was not yours. Aria's throat tightened. She wanted to argue. She wanted to throw the deed back at him, to scream that she was not a debt to be repaid, not a transaction to be settled. But something in his eyes stopped her. Something that recognized her. This is not charity, he continued. This is a debt paid. The only debt that matters. What do you want from me? The question escaped before she could stop it. Luca stepped toward her, and the city lights behind him seemed to dim, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I want you to stay. Emma needs you. The way she speaks of you, the way she draws pictures of you, the way she whispers your name when she wakes from nightmares. She needs you. And I? He paused, and in that pause was a confession that seemed to cost him everything. I need someone I can trust. You are the only person who acted when everyone else froze. You are the only person who has ever given me something that could not be bought. Aria felt something break open inside her chest, some locked chamber where she had kept her hope locked away for years. But she straightened her spine. She lifted her chin. I stay because I choose to, she said, her voice steady now, a blade itself. Not because I owe you. Not because I need your money. Because Emma needs me. And maybe you do too. Luca nodded, a single movement that seemed to cost him years. 3 weeks later, they sat in the late-night diner where everything had begun, at the exact same booth where Emma had collapsed in the thunderstorm. The clock on the wall showed 3:17 in the morning. Aria cradled a cup of coffee between her palms, watching the steam rise like ghosts. Across from her, Luca sat with Emma asleep against his shoulder, the little girl's head tilted back, her mouth slightly open, her breathing deep and safe. Aria reached into the bag beside her and pulled out Emma's shoes. The first pair she had ever owned. The worn leather, the faded pink laces, the small heel scuffed from being dragged across concrete on desperate nights when a 4-year-old girl had nowhere else to go. "I kept these," Aria whispered. "I do not know why. I just knew she mattered." Luca looked at the shoes in her hands, and something shifted in his expression. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible, a sound like surrender. "She still matters. You both do." Outside the diner window, the Nevada night pressed dark and eternal against the glass. But inside, in the fluorescent glow of a place that served weak coffee and small hopes, Aria and Luca sat with a sleeping child between them, and the world finally made sense. Weeks became months. The apartment Luca had secured became a home. Her children learned what it meant to eat breakfast without counting the cost. Emma learned what it meant to belong. And Aria learned something that the streets had tried to teach her for so long, but that she had been too afraid to accept, that sometimes, when you give everything, the universe gives back in ways you could never calculate. One afternoon, they walked through the shelter where Emma had hidden, where Aria had first discovered her. Luca carried blueprints. Aria carried hope. They stood in the courtyard where broken children had once trembled in the dark, and they began to rebuild it. Not for themselves. For the one still drowning. Emma ran between them, laughing, her small voice carrying across the empty space like a bell. Aria looked at Luca, and she said the words that had lived in her heart since the night she gave her blood for a stranger's child. "We were both drowning." Luca took her hand. His palm was warm. His grip was absolute. "And we both chose to fight," he said. Above them, the Las Vegas sky stretched infinite and forgiving. The darkness had passed. The storm had broken. And what remained was not the absence of pain, but the presence of someone who refused to leave when the night came. Family is not always bound by blood but by those who choose to stay when the storm arrives. If this story moved you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it right now. Subscribe to this channel because tomorrow we are bringing you another story that will shake you to your core. Drop a comment below telling us what you would have done in Aria's place. What would you have given? What would you have risked? We read every single comment, and your words matter to us. They stay with us long after the video ends. We will see you in the next one. Thank you for being here until the very end.